Okay, and welcome to the astrology of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. So, right now, the date is February 7th, 2021. And I just realized that yesterday, as I was preparing for this workshop, that my first ever crypto investment was exactly the same day. And it just turned out that way. So I was like, which was actually in 2018, February 6th, 2018. And that's when I was preparing a lot. The year before, I was just researching like every day, and then I began on that day. So it's sort of my crypto anniversary too. So here I am for on the anniversary. It just kind of happened that way, as things do often, right? Um, so happy to be celebrating that here with you. Okay. So anyway, the goal of today is to give you all a good lay of the land or the sky, the what crypto is, how it relates to astrology, why it's relevant now, and what the future looks like in cryptocurrency. Um, so I will be taking your questions throughout as well, but overall, I'd like to give you a pretty holistic view of this. And I'm going to start here. So just to give you a sense of where I want to go. Um, First, I'm going to tell you really what we're going to talk is a little bit beyond crypto. It's really how our whole financial system will transform in the next decade. Okay. And this will be so massive. We are literally just at the beginning of it all. Okay. So I just want to also say this. A lot of you are asking me, is it too late? No, it's definitely not too late to get in the game. It's still early. We are still at the beginning of this. So don't feel that you missed the boat, you missed the train, the spaceship, whatever. You're not too late. I just want you all to know that. I'm looking in the room right now and I'm seeing in the chat, we have people from all across the world, from Oregon, New Zealand, Nice, France, the Catskills, Las Vegas, Washington, Seattle, Huntington Beach, California, New York, everywhere. So great to have you all here today. Um, Wonderful. It's always lovely to have a global community, which really speaks to much of what cryptocurrency is. Okay, so a lot of you know me, you've been coming to my webinars for years. This is something I haven't talked about publicly yet. Some of you know me from my book, Your Body in the Stars, or you've taken classes in our school before. For those of you that don't know, I do run a year-round school with a curriculum from beginners to intermediate, advanced astrology classes, and every other subject in astrology in between. So if you haven't taken a class yet, check it out. We offer almost everything under the sun. So have fun with that if you'd like to. If you like my style, we'll share other resources with you after. So really what we're talking about in this workshop today is decentralization versus centralization for the most part. Okay, that's pretty much where we're going. So this is what essentially what centralization looks like, where you see the ruler, who would be your president or your king or the doge or whoever, on a coin. And that's the sort of hierarchical structure, right? So every time you use your money, you're reminded of who your ruler is. That was how it's been for literally thousands and thousands of years on planet Earth. The money system, the financial system, was completely in bed with government, right? Did you realize that every time you use a coin, you're saying, oh, that's who's running our state? You're constantly reminded. Okay. Essentially, what the blockchain is, what Bitcoin is decentralization. And I've been a full-time astrologer for about 15 years, seeing clients almost every day, running the school and everything like that. And I've been looking at this year and this whole era for quite a while, as Jupiter and Saturn entered Aquarius, and then Pluto entered Aquarius. And all of these cosmic shifts are very symbolic of what we call a decentralization in finance and in government. So the rise of Bitcoin is no surprise, astrologically speaking, and it's absolutely the future. So I have no problem with saying that's where things are going. Now there's many coins. Bitcoin is one of them. That said, I cannot predict exactly which coin in a decade from now will be the top out of all the altcoins because there's many. We'll talk about that later. We'll go through a few. But overall, what we're talking about is changing the framework of how we see life. Essentially, we all just went through 2020, right? With that cap stack, a whole lot of planets in Capricorn. And we saw the schism and the wealth divide become greater and greater. So that has not stopped. And what cryptocurrency actually does most, what we look at here, is what one of the greatest values of it is the fact that it can equalize the wealth distribution. So that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about. Here's a little run of show of today, but I wanted to give you a sense of like what we're really looking at here is the way that planets are moving at the macro level and where we're going into finance and government in the future, what that might look like, and also the part you can play in it. So I'm going to talk to you about my journey into financial astrology, what I've been doing with it over this last 15 years. And we're going to look at the whole history of coinage because it's important. We're going to do a quick run through of the history of money, see where we're at now. We're going to see how the 90s, the advent of the internet, the 2008 crisis, and what happened in 2020 were all key tipping points to end up where we are right now and what is to be the future. And then we're going to look at Bitcoin and gold and other cryptos to how to research them, how to look at projects, things like that. We'll make some projections, predictions, all that fun stuff. Sound good? That's what I had in mind today. So, yeah, that's it. Let's dive in. Yeah, it's not too late. I really want to remind you all, it's not too late to invest, to explore crypto. Many people have said that to me, and I don't know why. So it will be around for a very long time. Okay, so we're going to look at a brief history of money first of all. And well, actually, no, I said I was going to tell you about my journey into financial astrology. So it actually happened when I first started doing astrology publicly, which was in 2000 and I'd say 2004, 2005, where I started, I had a website. Back then it was probably Flash or something like that. And one of my first clients was an investor. Okay. So I was a pretty scared 25-year-old at first, thinking, oh, wow, I have an investor client that wants me to make financial predictions. And I had just started to do astrology publicly. So I said to them at that point, I was very honest. I said, look, I haven't studied financial astrology, so I might not be the person for you. And they said to me, just give it a go. Just try it. Use everything you know and apply it to finance. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll try. But I said, just make sure you look at your metrics and your financial analysis as well as my predictions. And so that was the deal, that they were going to make sure they do all their homework as well as they would, as well as listen to me. So to this day, I meet with that person monthly and give financial advice, insight based on the cosmic cycles. Now, I don't advertise myself as a financial astrologer because I really just don't want to do that. But what I will say is I learned a lot from that feedback loop because I've had a feedback loop going for about 15 years. And it's informed me a lot about what happens when, like when Venus goes direct or when Venus goes retrograde. I've learned so much. There is nothing like just getting in there. And I would say after that, about like 6 years into that, I decided to take some financial astrology classes with some of the experts. And then I studied it a great deal after that. So this is my background. Later on, I was watching Bitcoin for a long time. Then I jumped in the game when it spiked down in like 2018 and that day of February 6th, I believe. And so I've been watching it since. So that's sort of my background in financial astrology. There's nothing like getting in there. You can take all the classes you want, but once you're in it, and you will learn so much from pure experience. So that's a little bit of my background in the financial space. And I have to say that feedback loop running was like the greatest teacher ever. Because another thing is that the codes always change, and you can never get too confident in yourself, because what you're going to learn as you study financial astrology, and especially blockchain currency, is that codes change. And that's just life. It happens. You have to stay agile. Okay. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit of my background, and yeah, we'll dive in. I'll just share with you what I've learned, and I hope it helps you. So, right, we started off back in the old days with barter system, which worked pretty well until it didn't anymore. I'll trade your silk for spices, this for that. Essentially, that can get too complicated after a while, and we created coinage. Now, as you're going to notice, the early coinage looks a lot like the current coinage. It has not changed very much. You had gold, silver, copper coins, or debased metals, dipped in something eventually, with a figurehead who's like the head of state on it. And that's from, thousands of years ago to today. Nothing has changed in our coinage, pretty much. So is that not unbelievable, right? It's pretty much the same way that we see economy and government tied in together through the money system. So we started off with barter. In 1200 BC, we went to the cowrie shells became the symbol of trade, which was the first form of money. And then in 600 BC, the first coins appeared out of what's modern day Turkey, maybe Anatolia or something like that. So that's what we're seeing there. Yeah. Now, the problem with all those local currencies was that they were local pretty much, and you couldn't use them outside of the zone that they were in. And so then the big old Roman Empire happened, right? And the Roman Empire was so big that it tried to create a universal currency that was used throughout the whole Mediterranean world, okay? And the Qing and the Han dynasties in China also created a currency that was more of a global currency that would be used in the East, okay? So the first sort of large-scale currencies that were to span more than a little city started to emerge, right, in the Roman Empire. And they even had a three-tiered system of copper, gold, and bronze, analogous to kind of like pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, stuff like that. So that all happened, right? And, before these universal like currencies, the pre-Roman local coins had a chisel cut into them where you could see that it was actually gold or silver. Okay, now that's important to remember as we go through this all today, because that chisel became less important when the Roman standardization happened. Because that's when government, instead of local rule, before it was the local cities would have their own little coins, right? Then when larger government took over the coins, they said, no, we don't need that chisel in the coin to show the metal of it anymore, pretty much. Because the value then became based on government decrees. So the government's deciding the value of it, not what the coin consisted of. So that's a whole different paradigm, that the coin, that the gold and the copper is worth money versus the government decides on a value. And that's the value. Are you all with me? Does that make sense? So this is a huge change in the paradigm, right? But everybody just kind of adopted it because that's what they thought they had to do. That was the way, you know, this was what was going on. So fiat money like this basically allowed governments to reduce the actual silver and gold in coins. So they really lost their actual value. And then value was just kind of like this made up thing that, you know, it's just like if I say that, you know, this is like the lid of my cup, this is worth $20, or I would be the government, today this is $100. Like I would just be making up a value out of thin air. So that's essentially what happened. Millions of coins were minted by the 3rd century. They would just be dipped in a silver, and that was enough. Okay. All right. We're going to get into the astrology, but this resulted in inflation. The currency was debased. Essentially, it's a form of taxation. This creates uncertainty in a culture, and it inhibits trade. That's kind of the long-term result of this process of debasing money, right? Another result is political, economic, and military instability. Sound familiar? So this didn't only happen in the Roman Empire. The same debasement was happening in China with those dynasties around the same time. So there was a reform to coinage. They would last a few years, and the debasement would get worse and worse each time they would go back, okay? Sounds like an abusive relationship, right? So this resulted overall in the failure of these currencies and the fall of these empires eventually. Now, the introduction of single currency, I mean, it did enable trade, though it also enabled governments to debase currency and therefore make the population poorer and more vulnerable and easier to control. Okay. Now, years later, the Byzantine Empire happened, when that empire was just ginormous, right? And they created their centralized coin, which was even bigger than the Roman Empire's coin, called the solidus or the gold trimessus. And this lasted 1,000 years, a huge amount of time, right? But they went through the same problems that the Roman coins did, which is the debasement. The whole story happened again, right? Watch history. Watch what we've been through. Now, here we are now, right? We're starting to repeat the same cycles. So it's really important to look at these patterns in history. And if you see the astrology of the fall of the Roman Empire and Byzantium, you will see many indicators that looked similar to what was going on towards the end of 2020. Okay. And the wonderful thing about astrology is that we can look at cycles and, you know, patterns. It really is about pattern recognition. And we have choice. We can choose to approach it differently. So this is our moment where we can take the same story and say, why don't we try a new route instead of going back to the same old route that we've been on, which is the debasement. Let's try again, back and forth, back and forth. Okay, does this make sense, everybody? So let's see. Yeah, okay, coming back here. So basically, that the same thing happened, yeah, in Byzantium. And, you know, basically there was the same story of debasement of currency. There was a lack of trade until the gold got reinstated again in the 13th century. Fast forward many, many years later. So right now, I do suggest those of you that are astrologers in the room, you can look at the chart of the fall of the Roman Empire and all of these things. And the Mongol Empire, there's absolutely similar qualities that you'll see. Now, what's different is now many planets are moving into Aquarius, and we are essentially moving into this whole new place in the solar system. Where a lot more is available to us, a whole new way of thinking. So the gold standard. Some of you know what this is, some of you don't. I'm going to go through a quick refresher because this is where Bitcoin really, the idea of it comes in. So the gold standard is a system where a country's currency can be in exchange for gold. It's that simple. Currency is analogous to gold. A certain dollar amount becomes a gold amount. And it was introduced in England in 1717. It became universal in Europe by the late 1870s. The US currency established it in 1792, and so on. So essentially, for the last 200 years almost, we had been in a gold standard reality, right? And we sort of just got out of that somewhat recently in the last century, but that's where we were for quite a while. Okay, now that was the closest we were to a universal currency. It didn't last that long because of the wars. And whenever there was a war, the government would print more money. Currencies were fixed to gold, and gold matched currencies to one another, essentially. Let me see. Hold on. Okay. The result of the gold standard was the elimination of dramatic fluctuations of currencies. It created a stabilization. Paper money could only be issued if it was backed by gold reserves, and exchange rates had stability. Currently, exchange rates fluctuate so much every week. You know that if you're traveling, right? So after World War I, many countries got off the gold standard because of poverty, and people wanted to fight a war, which cost a lot of money. And so they decided to print more money. See, if you look at history, wars are the big problem with this. Whenever there's a war, countries are like, oh, print more money. And there's, this massive inflation. So failed attempts to return to the gold standard happened in the 1920s, 1930s. And then again, after World War II, every country had its own currency that was based pretty much on international supply and demand off the gold standard. Okay. So, well, the problem with that, when it's all based on supply and demand, is that countries that have very little natural resources, essentially, it will be very hard for their citizens to establish wealth if everything is based from supply and demand. And essentially, that sets them up for strict financial control. Now, what Bitcoin and the blockchain do is essentially they reintroduce the idea of a gold standard, but they make it accessible for anybody to acquire wealth, no matter what your government is and what the regime is and how much financial control you are under. There's an evening out of the playing field that we're seeing in the future here. That is very possible. So let me take a quick break and see if you all have any questions in the Q&A. All right. Let's see. I'm just going to have a look if there's any. Okay, a lot of you are asking me about specific recommendations. I'm going to get into certain coins near the end. Yeah, I'm not a financial advisor, but I will. Yeah, I can answer some of those questions towards the end. Okay. All right. So just wanted to give you all a little bit of a background first before we dive into it, because it's really important to look at history and know your history. I see a lot of people jumping into Bitcoin and people don't know what they're doing. People lose money and then they get scared and get out of it. That's why you really have to know what's happened, know the part it plays, and do your research well before really jumping in. You really need to know what you're doing. Okay. All right. I know all of you are like, probably half here watching the Super Bowl as well. Um, Somebody says, wonder if the Fed will take out control of blockchain. I do not think so. Okay. So let's look at the events that led up to the rise of cryptocurrency and where we are at right now. Cryptocurrency rises about 200% every year. Okay. That's not bad. Now that said, if you've just started to invest, you might let's see it go down 30%, up 30%. If you were in that whole Doge bubble, it was like 900, down 400, whatever. Okay. A lot of ups and downs are normal with it. I'm just going to say that too. All right. So you really have to not look at all of those ups and downs if you want to just trust they're going to happen every day. Okay. But the big picture, it is on the rise yearly. Okay. You have to take the zoom lens way out and see the macro cycles here. Very important. That said, we're going to look at a series of events that happened. In the 1990s, a whole lot of planets gathered together in the sign of Aquarius, similar to the way they are now. And that whole group of planets, you know what they did? They created the internet. We created the internet. We channeled the energy of those Aquarian planets, and we created this technology that was coded that could connect anybody across the globe in just less than a second, right? So this was groundbreaking for sure. And that was sort of the first big gathering of recent planets in the sign of Aquarius. All right, so we're all on the internet. 2008, there's a financial crisis. There's a really big problem, right? Okay, these guys were in Wall Street were just like pressing buttons and making more zeros happen, similar to the printing of more money, right? Pluto was at the end of Sagittarius, right before it went into Capricorn. The big bubble of Sagittarius popped, and then we are back to the bare bones. So that crisis, that square that preceded that, Bitcoin came out of that as a solution, as a way for wealth to have equal and fair distribution. Okay, because this was the reality of the unfairness, which has recently come up again. 2020, look at this. We've all been online with our whole lives since the beginning of coronavirus. If you weren't comfortable with online banking before, maybe now you are. All of us have gotten pretty comfortable doing everything online. So the idea of having a currency that is virtual, that is code, might not be as far-fetched now as it would have been even 3 years ago, just because of what's happened even in the pandemic over the last year. It has set us up to have a certain level of comfort with this as well. So, yeah, this was the big pressure cooker in 2020. All those planets in Capricorn were like, we need a new solution. We can't go on like this anymore. And here's the chart. This is not the Bitcoin chart, but it's around the creation of Bitcoin. And you're going to see something here that's pretty interesting. You're going to see this group of planets in the sign of Aquarius, right? Interesting. Jupiter conjunct Chiron, conjunct Neptune in Aquarius in 2009, around the time that Bitcoin was created. So what the soup of 2009 was really about was Jupiter. That was the last time it's in Aquarius now, again, but this was about the vision, what's possible, what can happen in technology, in innovation, and Neptune really inspired that vision. And Chiron is like, we can solve world problems with this vision. Let's heal with this vision. There are bigger things at stake here than just making money. So what we're seeing here is a whole group of planets gathering in the sign of Aquarius, similar to what happened in the creation of the internet. And this is around when the internet sort of became big. You're also going to see a whole group of planets gathered together in the sign of Aquarius. Here we are, Jupiter once again in Aquarius, as it is right now. And that's the creation, Jupiter in Aquarius, Uranus, Sun in Aquarius, Neptune in Aquarius, once again in 1998. And that's the creation of the internet. Neptune, Uranus, and Jupiter all there, right? So I consider blockchain like the internet part 2. Like this is the next wave. So there was the internet and there's blockchain. Now, I know that it was created a while ago, but I see now it being more readily absorbed. Now that the planets in our solar system have finally entered Aquarius, where they were when the internet was created. So we're going to see a higher level of absorption in the culture right now, especially 2021, leading all the way up into Pluto in Aquarius. 2023 and 2024 is when we're going to start to see mass absorption. And then the next 20 years after that with Pluto in Aquarius, I'm pretty sure that this will be sort of like the main currency. We might still have fiat money, but this will absolutely be, we'll have sort of mass absorption. Okay. So that's pretty soon, right? All right. Let's look at these indicators. Well, the first one is the planet Uranus is in Taurus right now. The planet Uranus is here to upend and shake things up. Taurus rules our financial system. So clearly that's what's happening right now. You see how all of the ingredients are perfectly fitting into this. And Uranus is in Taurus from March 2019 to July 2026. So that's the time where I see not just the rise of Bitcoin. There's sure a lot of controversy around it too, as we're going to see this year. So, and especially when Pluto is there too, from 2023 onwards. However, during this time, it feels like we are in a big changeover of how we define value and money. Now, aside from that, Pluto is also in Capricorn from 2008 to 2024, around 2023, 2024. And then it enters Aquarius. So right now, the US is in its Pluto return. The US is kind of getting turned upside down in some ways. Our financial system, a lot of countries are looking at us. The US happens to be a popular country at the moment. And when our financial system turns over and changes a lot, so do a lot of other countries too. So we're seeing that with our government, our finances, so many other things happening. These are the macro cycles we're in right now, but I'm excited to see this Pluto in Aquarius 2023 and 2024. Already, though, 2021 is one of the most exciting years, I think, because the level of innovation is like nothing else we've experienced in our lifetime, perhaps beyond even what the internet was. Okay. So the economic crash really did set us up for this, because it really showed us the haves and the have-nots, the 1% and the 99%, and that became extremely evident. And that is important, that it became that much like in your face that you can say, I need to make a difference. We need to do something about this. We need to take back our control. The people need to regain their power. So as the dollar starts to inflate, and it's challenging because, of course, people need to live, and stimulus checks are helping people survive right now too. But we still have to look at really the bigger picture of what's happening to the dollar. So what we're going to see right now with Uranus and Taurus is a complete change in the way we see value. Right now, if you live in the United States, you're very privileged because you probably have access to a bank account and clean water, things like that. Most of the world, or more than half of the world, does not. So this is important to think about often. What blockchain does is it makes wealth accessible to you whatever social standing you are at in society, wherever you are. All you need is access to a internet. You don't even have to have an address. You can literally be homeless. You can just go on the internet somewhere, in a library, something, so really there is Uranus and Taurus will absolutely shake up and upend our financial system, and perhaps work to create more of an even playing field for the distribution of wealth. Okay. Let's see, there's so many questions here. You guys are all asking me about certain coins. I'm going to get into the coins at the end. But look, this is not going off completely smooth, because you're going to see throughout the year Saturn squares Uranus. Now, you're also going to remember what led up to Bitcoin was like what we had around the creation too, was Uranus square Pluto. Saturn square Uranus, problems predicate solutions. So we have problem of the law, the legality, the government versus the people, right? Saturn square Uranus tends to be an aspect that's woven throughout all of 21, namely February, June, and December. So these months, as we've already seen, February, we've seen that, a lot happen in the media with GameStop and Dogecoin and AMC. All of that really brought Bitcoin into the center stage. And we will be seeing a lot more of that this year. During those other times too. Now, somebody says, what will prompt the crypto surge is the stock bubble birthing. So which Saturn-Uranus square will it be? February, June, or December? Well, the June is the retrograde, and then the December is the direct again. They all play a part in it. So usually they're part of the same story. Follow the trail. Look at the events now. They will connect to what happens in June and December, right? In 1776, we made a country, which was when Pluto's at where it is right now. Right now, we're in the Pluto return of our country, which is Pluto's the planet of death and rebirth. We are redefining what our country is, our whole economic and government system at the moment. Meanwhile, we can be all distracted by consumerism and a whole lot of other things out there. But back at the ranch, there's this larger reversal change happening under the surface. And it doesn't happen that quickly. It's happening over a period of time that we're in right now. It might be harder to see the bigger picture, but we are in sort of like the eye of the needle right now of this changeover. Now, when I look at what are finance trends indicators, essentially there's three things that I look at. Four things. I look at Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune. Well, Saturn, Jupiter tells me what's really topical, what's important at the moment. And they're both in Aquarius. So I see new advents in technology. Even if it's stocks, it's like the new. What's the newest? What's freshest? What's the most innovative? And of course, that Aquarius is a sign that also has a lot to do with blockchain. And what I've noticed personally with Aquarius is that many of the Ethereum-based currencies have planets in Aquarius, as does Bitcoin too. So you're going to see a lot more Aquarian focus. So as I was saying, I look at Saturn and Jupiter. They tell me what's really topical at the moment. Uranus is going to show me where it's happening, which is in Taurus in the financial system. And the way we use our earth, also agriculture, money, Uranus being in Taurus. And then Neptune, I look at as well. Neptune is in Pisces, which rules pharmaceuticals. Well, I guess the vaccine and things like that are going to be pretty popular, as well as other things that are Piscean, perhaps like the cannabis world or alcohol and drugs or pharmaceuticals, perhaps meditation apps, astrology apps, things like that as well could lend itself to Piscean as well. And I like watching the news and looking at how, astrology is in the news. So this article in Forbes just came out about why February is the biggest month for Bitcoin. But no surprise, because there was a big new moon in Aquarius, in February, that's with Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius. Like there's a whole group of planets in Aquarius. Of course, it's a huge month for Bitcoin, and it's all talking to the Bitcoin and the Ethereum chart. So yeah, February's big. And you see it in Forbes talking about that as well. All right. So we talked about Jupiter there, Saturn there. I'm just going to check in on any questions. I think we're going to see, wow, such a big shift with Pluto moving into Aquarius too. Yeah, I'm going to look at all the coins in the second half. Video games too, right? That's another Piscean thing, I guess. Absolutely, Nicole. Yeah. VR. Oh yeah, VR. We're going to see a lot more of that for Pisces. Exactly. Good point. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to see Aquarius also deals with humanity as a whole. Okay, so we're going to look at solving world problems, humanitarian issues like clean water, redistribution of wealth, a money that can redistribute wealth and create equal opportunities, especially for those under strict government regimes. Remember that motto we looked at the end. Essentially, this is power to the people, what we're seeing here. Which is very different than the one figurehead on the coin, this world that we've been in for quite a while. It does require a revolution in consciousness. It requires a different way of thinking. And that, so that's why, mass adoption can take longer, because it does require us to start really orienting ourselves in a different way to the world and money worth having. I see somebody, Jorge, is saying, it feels as if the energy being stored in cryptocurrency will drive efforts globally, direct influence coupled with visibility and inclusivity. I feel that completely, Jorge. I will work on transcribing this after for those of you that would like captions as well. Okay. Eclipses are always sort of like change markers of events, and I think the eclipses of this year definitely set us up as well. We're not going to go into that too much now, because I really want to dive into the charts with you as well. We're almost like halfway through now. Hold on. Where's my timer? There. Hold on. Let's see how we're doing. Okay. So yeah, the US chart had so much opposition over the last really since 2008. Everything's been opposing the US planets, and especially now. So yeah, interesting to note. The US chart looks a lot like the chart of Ripple, actually, in some ways. Okay. So what we're going to look at now when we look at these charts is what is our role in the future and what is value? I personally, when I look at and see what's happening in other countries and people that are able to flee other countries because of blockchain, personally, I'm looking at this and seeing value as freedom. Freedom is something that we can take for granted here, although it shouldn't be like that, but we can. So not only is it a vehicle for wealth distribution, but also freedom. So centralized wealth can be shut down by totalitarian governments. And I do want to go over these pointers too before we go into the charts. These are really important to know, just like facts about Bitcoin. 99% of Bitcoin will be mined or in circulation over the next decade. Okay, the next decade. This is a great time to get in. It's the next decade. And I'm not just saying go in blindly. You need to probably do some research first. And I'll talk about that a little bit when I show you the charts as well. By 2140, all of the Bitcoin will be distributed. Right now, we're around 87 to 88% of it has been distributed. There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. Right now, a distribution is close to 18.5 million. And somebody asked in the chat, are we going to go to 100K by the end of this year? I think it's totally possible. We're at around 40 now. Yeah, it can totally happen. The amount of Bitcoin. And yeah, so again, a 30% increase, decrease on a daily can be normal. And it goes up maybe close to 200% a year. I think the understanding, a lot of you are in the United States right now, and understanding US privilege is really key to understand Bitcoin and what it can do on a global scale. So Aquarian. So we're saying you don't even have to have a home, an address, a phone number. You just need access to the internet to be able to use to use money, to use Bitcoin. Right now, 53% of the world's population live under authoritarian regimes which use poverty as a means of control. More than 4 billion cannot open a bank account. Governments freeze bank accounts periodically in countries such as Nigeria and Belarus and many others when one speaks out against government. See, this is so different than perhaps your life or my life at the moment, but we have to think globally right now and where we're going as a whole. Because this is like more than half of the world. Military systems in Burma shut down ATMs and bank accounts during the last coup. Can you imagine the government just shutting down your bank account and all the ATMs? Venezuelan citizens are converting their currency to Bitcoin and escaping already, as are citizens of other countries too. So this is already happening on a global scale. I think that's really exciting. It's helping citizens across the globe to escape tyranny and currency collapse. Okay. So what do y'all want to do? Do you want to dive into some charts? Do you want to look at the chart of Bitcoin, Doge, Ethereum, and a few others? I'm going to have a look at your questions here. All right, you all want charts. Nicole says, what are some of the downsides of Bitcoin? Well, I think it's a problem when people go into it and they are really attached to the money that they put into it. And they're watching it every day and they see it go down all the way and they get scared and they take everything out. So like when I put money, I'm just like, okay, I'm not going to look at it. Just going to leave it there in things like Bitcoin and Ethereum, which are kind of like, you know, the Apples and the Amazons. Like they're just like blue chips. They're kind of stable, right? So that you just let rest. Like you can't be watching that every day go up and down. So I think one of the downsides of it is that people get really scared and invest and take out and they lose a lot because they were not educated. You really need to get educated. You cannot just invest on any random project that looks good. You should know the people involved. You should know their background, know what you're investing in. Also, there's no like, oh, I forgot my password situation. Like, you need to be responsible. And I think this is just kind of like, why were we not responsible before? Like, do not lose your password. Keep it on a zip drive. Keep it somewhere safe. Put it on a piece of paper in a Ziploc bag somewhere. We have to be responsible for ourselves. We have to have full agency. And Bitcoin requires that of you. If you want this level of freedom, you also have to take this level of responsibility. You can't say, oh, I lost my password. I don't know where I put it. Okay? A lot of you are asking about Ripple and Doge. I'll talk about that. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. All right. There are so many questions. Let me just pull up the charts of the coins and we'll go from there. Okay. All right. So you could probably all see my screen right now. I'll start with the chart of Bitcoin. Some of you that know me know that I like to do solar charts as well as natal charts. So every time I invest in something, I'm looking at the chart of it. I want to make sure it's a good investment for me. I want to make sure it has a good life ahead, all that kind of good stuff, you know? So looking at the charts of coins is always a fun thing to do. Somebody says, what's a solar chart? That's just putting the sun sign on the ascendant, 0 degrees. So this is the chart of Bitcoin. It is a celebrity. You know, it's the fame. I always call a cap sun with a Leo rising the celebrity chart, you know, which it is. It's the most famous of all the coins. And it's sort of like the gold standard. And it's really kind of what you have to get into to do everything else. A lot of you are saying, why solar chart? You take one of my classes, I go all into it. It is necessary to get the full picture. I really believe in solar charts. Okay. So, I mean, let's look at this. So we have a lot of planets in Capricorn here. Pluto, Mars, pretty powerful energy in Capricorn. Sun in Capricorn. Mercury is at 2 degrees of Aquarius. Now, with a stock or with a coin, the Mercury is quite important because the Mercury is the commerce, the trade, and things like that, which is obviously what it does. So I do pay close attention to that Mercury in Aquarius. So I'm just going to give you a look at, I mean, it's a solid chart. It's very powerful. With the Pluto Mars, it's like steel. It's famous, Cap Leo. However, you know, the Aries moon squares it. Sure, there's opposition and things like that, but it's quite pioneering for sure. It's a lot of cardinal and fixed energy. It's not going anywhere. I'll show you the structure of the different coins first, and then we can look at what's going on with them now. Okay. Do you want to have a look at Ethereum? And then I'll show you another Ethereum-based coin. So I personally think Bitcoin and Ethereum are both wonderful, and they do totally different things. Bitcoin is like gold, essentially, and Ethereum is more like it's going in the way to be more like a processing system. So for example, where you could get credit or interest, or perhaps buy things with and shop. So it would be like a system that processing and purchasing can run upon too, as credit and many other things. So they do totally different things. The word ether and Ethereum kind of alludes to the light speed of processing that it's really built for. Um, you're also going to see an early degree of Aquarius in this chart, the moon at 1 degree of Aquarius in the Ethereum chart. It also has a whole lot of planets in Leo, like the Bitcoin chart does. And you're going to notice the sun of Bitcoin, which is at 7 degrees Leo. I mean, the sun of Ethereum, which is at 7 Leo, is on the Bitcoin ascendant. So they definitely have a strong relationship to each other. Now, Ethereum's interesting because it has Venus in Virgo and Mars in Cancer. And I see detriment and fall planets very different than other people. So, I mean, basically, they're the rule breakers. They're the ones that do things differently than the mass. They succeed when they don't follow the rules, when they create their niche and do their own thing. So essentially, that's what Ethereum needs to do. It's not a rule follower. It will create its own ways. Now, keep those early Aquarius degrees in mind because that's certainly, the sign where Jupiter and Saturn are and where Pluto will be soon. That's double-sided, by the way. Now, a lot of you asked me to talk about Dogecoin. So as I said, when I look at a coin, I research the project like Ethereum. I understand what it's doing, understand the purpose of it. I get what Bitcoin is. So, read up on Dogecoin, understand what it is. Because you might see, Elon Musk tweets about it, or there's a lot of memes about it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it has a great purpose in the world and that it has a function. Okay, so when you look at this chart, you're going to see, you're going to still see an early degree of Aquarius like you've seen in many of the coins, right? You're also going to see Neptune square Mercury. And hold on one second. Just want to make sure. Yeah. Right. So I have mixed thoughts about this coin. I think it gets a lot of sudden publicity because of what's happened right now, along with GameStop. And it's sort of like, it made a point. It was a PR stint, which really brought all of crypto into the headliners, which was very important. And, through GameStop, through Elon Musk's tweet, though I'm curious about the larger functionality of this coin. You can see right now, if we look at the transits, it's certainly getting some attention, Okay, so I'm not personally looking at this too much, actually, because it's, I think it played a role in bringing attention, and which was very important, to something we needed to see, which was how the citizens are playing Wall Street at their own game. Okay, so that's Doge. Those are my thoughts on Doge. Now, I'm happy to, I'll look at Ripple too. Hold on. Is there a good time to get out of it? I don't know. The transits to a coin you would look at. So you don't want to, like with crypto, sometimes it can get scary. You can see something drop, like go up 900% and go down 200, and you can get scared and take everything out. That's normal. Again, it happens all the time. So you have to really step back and look at the bigger cycles. So we can talk about that. I do want to look at Ripple though, because I've been following Ripple and XRP and the lawsuit as well. So now back in 2017, 2018, I was consulting with some investment firms on the West Coast, and they asked me to look at a lot of different coins, and they kind of just like spouted out names. and I would look at the charts of the coins and give them just like a boiler point. What's this coin about? The energy of it. Now, when I saw Ripple for the first time, I saw, wow, they're really trying to get in bed with the banks, right? With all of that Cancer and Capricorn going on, just like the US chart, and that's their DNA, right? But I was so apprehensive about this coin. Do you know why? What's the problem you see in the Ripple chart? Somebody that knows astrology and what's going on now, what do you see that could be dangerous in that Ripple chart? Yeah, Uranus, yes. And also the fact that Pluto's opposing the Mercury. Now, Pluto opposed the Mercury of New York City and when all the stores fronts closed, that was the worst day for New York City when everything had to shut down, right? Pretty much. Pluto opposed the Mercury of Manhattan. Now, Pluto opposed the Mercury of Ripple on the exact day they got hit with the lawsuit and went back and forth over that Mercury when the lawsuit kept coming back again and again and again. So I saw that coming. I was like, I do not like this. I just saw a lot that was now, okay, not sure what's going on exactly right now with the coin, but we know that's all just happened. So this coin's been beat up a lot. Some people say they're coming back in some ways. Uranus too, exactly. So you can... But this doesn't, to me, yes, it's a famous coin. It's a Leo. It's a popular coin. It doesn't have the Aquarius signature that many of the others do. And there's a lot of planets in Cancer. It looks like Cancer Capricorn, they're trying to get in bed with the banks. But the banks want to, put a lawsuit on them. So, interesting. Now, here's the chart of the lawsuit. You're going to see it. One of the lawsuits right there on the Ripple chart. You're going to see Pluto opposing the Mercury exactly of Ripple around December 22nd. Okay. Yeah, so you want to look at the transits, and if I see all of that said, looking at the transits, those early degrees of Aquarius that we're seeing in all these amazing signature coins, Bitcoin, all of the Ethereum-based coins have early degrees of Aquarius. We all know where Pluto is going to be in 2023 and 2024. Yeah, it's going to be on those degrees. Okay, so that can mean many things. It can mean the coin takes on a new form. It steps up into its power. They can be readily absorbed. But we do see that's a big change, obviously, when Pluto hits those early degrees of Aquarius. Robinhood. I'll look at Robinhood. The launch of, the found and the launch is kind of different, but hold on. The 2015 chart. So, I mean, Pluto squares the Venus of Robinhood. I really don't know. I haven't yet honestly studied the Robinhood chart enough to make predictions based on that. But I'm not seeing that much there, to be honest with you. I see Mercury's at a late degree of Aquarius. I think we'll see a lot more of it towards the middle and the end of the year, actually. We don't know the time. You can't look at the houses in any of the, in this chart, because we don't know of the time of it. Now here's an example of an Ethereum-based coin called Avi that came out of Estonia, Tallinn, Estonia. And once again, you're going to see the moon in Aquarius here, which you see in so many Ethereum-based charts, which is great because, I mean, that's what's going on this year. Jupiter and Saturn are in Aquarius, and then Pluto's going to enter Aquarius. So Aquarius is getting a lot of attention. Sagittarius Sun, all of that. Now, Bitcoin is sort of like a mass regulator where it controls many of the coins. So if you really just look at the chart of Bitcoin, you'll see the charts of many crypto, within that. And if we take Bitcoin, say, into the summertime, we're going to notice that, for example, in May, Jupiter is going to, around May 16th, Jupiter will meet the Venus of Bitcoin. So that might be a sort of good time for Bitcoin. There's also challenges throughout the year as well. But I think overall it's a pretty strong year for crypto if you take the zoom lens out and look at the bigger picture. Okay. All right. How are we doing? Yeah, so for anyone interested, yeah, you can use my Solar Fire code. It's called, right, people are asking for that. It's called Live Your Stars 15. Live Your Stars, all in lowercase. Kira, are there any questions in the Q&A that you'd like to ask me that people are asking?
A lot of people are curious about what types of apps to use.
Well, there's many of them, right? Well, you can't, it's Binance.us now. It's no longer just Binance. And it really depends on what coins you get. So different coins are available on different apps. You know, Coinbase is a big one, but there's many new ones too. So if you're just going to have like Bitcoin and Ethereum, you'd probably be fine with just one of the main apps, one of the popular ones. But if you're going to get some altcoins and things like that, you might need to use some of the other lesser known apps that they live on.
A few other people are also wondering if it's likely to dip in the next 2 to 3 months.
Well, it's always going to dip and go back up. I mean, yeah, I think that overall the big picture is it's going up almost 200% a year. So you have to, if you're going to put money in, it has to be money that you would be okay to see it all disappear, because you're going to look sometimes and it will all be gone. Then it'll show up again. You have to be okay with that. So it will always dip and come back. But I think in the end, we're going to come out on top, perhaps doubled by the end of the year with all of this energy in Aquarius. Yeah.
So for some beginners, when would be a good time to buy?
Absolutely, when it dips, when it's going through a more challenging time. You know, and I really don't want, I hate to give financial advice on a place like this and tell people exactly what to do when. But let's see, I can just overall, we can look at the charts and you can decide what you want to do. So like there's the chart of Bitcoin, for example. Oh, hold on, sorry. Okay, so let's try this. There's the chart of Bitcoin. I'm going to pull a transit report and we can see when Bitcoin's going through the hardest time. Okay, let's check it out. I mean, it's a pretty good May, you know, though let's have a look. It's a strong year. I don't know. It's a solid, Bitcoin's doing great this year. I would have to look at more of the microcycles to see the exact dips, but they'll be there's always little dips here and there. Like that's going to be very normal. Saturn opposed the ascendant, perhaps. I don't know though, like you see around March 4th, but watch it. Watch for yourself. You see these dates around March 4th, August 20th, and November 29th. Saturn opposes the ascendant of Bitcoin. That could be a challenging time for them. They could be receiving some opposition around those times. It's really possible. And also Uranus squares the ascendant around March 28th as well. Okay, I hope that helps. What's the next question?
A lot of people are curious if they should invest during the Mercury retrograde.
Well, usually what I've noticed in financial astrology is that when Venus or Mercury goes direct or retrogrades, we see corrections in the markets. Now, It's hard to say. So the moment Mercury goes direct, we could see a big change at that moment. I'm not, on this public platform right now, I'm not going to tell everybody when to invest. There are people that will do that right now. Though it's, how do I say this? Yeah, I mean, you want to be monitoring the markets, like have the Coinbase app on your phone or any of the apps and just be watching them around when planets go direct or retrograde, and be ready. Yeah.
And some people are curious if they want to get into financial astrology. Do you teach classes about it? Are there any books you recommend people to follow or teachers?
So there are, I can say I've taken classes with a few people over the years at conferences and weekends and things like that. I've taken classes with people like Grace Morris for like a week at an OPA retreat, or Ray Merriman, and also I've read a great deal of books on financial astrology too. So what would I recommend? Yeah, I mean, I think getting a financial astrology in your inbox weekly would be great. Like Ray Merriman's is really good. I would look into that. Just first start reading up on it. Get acquainted with the language and everything. Yeah. Anything else? I mean, I'm not teaching a class on it or anything yet, and I don't know somebody who is at the moment. I could look into that though.
I think this is an interesting question. Somebody asked, do you recommend comparing my natal chart to the coins chart?
Okay, admittedly, I do that. I always look at the coins of my natal charts together because I love investing in coins that I know I'm going to get along with. So yeah, I think it's fun to do. Of course, you always want to check first if it's a good project, if you like what they're doing in the world. Basically, you're investing in a concept, and a lot of these projects, for example, will put a lot of their money into things like clearing plastics from the water, or giving clean water in developing countries. Some projects have a lot higher missions too. And certain projects have wonderful people involved that have great resumes behind them. So you always want to research the project thoroughly and read up on everything around it before you really invest in it. You want to be an educated investor. Yes. But yeah, of course, you can look at your chart with the coin too. Do it all the time. Another question?
Through your mentorships, would you consult individuals on Bitcoin?
So I have done that before. Yeah, like I have done that in mentorships. That's probably the only place where I do that now, just because I don't want to like brand myself as a financial astrologer, because honestly, I enjoy so many other things in astrology. And sometimes if you start just doing that, then it all becomes that. So I'm pretty mindful of like how I'm positioning myself. So even though I've done that a lot, I don't want to just be known for that, But yeah, in mentorships, I do often go more so into crypto. Yeah, I mean, I think Aave has a great chart, and they're similar to a lot of the Ethereum-based coins too. They all have similar Aquarian signatures. It's fascinating. Okay, any other questions, Kira?
I think we're good.
All right. So what do you all think? Did you enjoy this? Did you learn anything new? I hope so. And it was really fun to prepare this for all of you. I thoroughly enjoyed spending the time tonight on this Sunday night. Thanks for taking the time out. Yeah, I would encourage you to jump in, though, do your research, get educated, and have fun. This is the future. Have a beautiful night. Thanks so much. Bye.